Poor Doppo literally cannot catch a break. Hi everyone, MC Mad Lion here, and I bet you're thinking, wait, haven't I watched this video already? You know, this one with these guys? Well, yes and no. It's been a long time since my first Doppo talk, and a lot of things changed pretty rapidly after I posted it. So, welcome to Doppo's Salaryman Life version 2.0. Once again, we are going to take a deep dive into how Doppo's character reflects modern Japanese culture and daily life for the average 30 and below urban white-collar working crowd. This isn't just a rehash of the first video, there is some new information. So if you've seen the video before, it'll be great review, plus you're gonna learn something new. And if this is your first time at Doppo's Talk, welcome! Let's start at the best place to start and take a look at Doppo himself. Poor, overworked Doppo. Doppo is what they call a salaryman in Japanese. He's a white-collar cog stuck in the corporate machine without much hope for the future. The salaryman is a pretty common stereotype of Japan, but how does Doppo illustrate the modern salaryman, and why is he so real and so relatable? First of all, Doppo works for what's called a black kigyo in Japanese, buraku kigyo. In English, it's what we would call a toxic workplace, and it involves everything you do not want in an employer. Unrealistic overtime expectations, abusive lazy management, and a sad excuse for a salary. Doppo himself is often referred to as shachiku, which means corporate slave, and it's a play on the word kachiku, which means livestock, so you kind of get the picture there. Doppo's salary, by the way, can be estimated at about 5,830,000 yen based on his line in the Me Against the World drama track, where he says his division rap battle victory earnings, 35 million yen, are 6 times his yearly salary. Now, this is actually not that bad for someone Doppo's age and in his position, unless he's talking before taxes, in which case, yeah, it's a pretty crappy salary considering all of the overtime he does, especially if he and Hifumi really live in Shinjuku and pay rent there. Although it's probably fair to assume that, you know, Hifumi pays the rent since he doesn't even blink at the thought of 35 million yen. Oh! Now, as a fun, actually not really fun aside, salaries in Tokyo have been dropping consistently over the past few years, and the average cost of living, while it's still pretty low, has been going up along with the rest of the world. So Doppo is probably in an even worse place money-wise than he was back when they won the first division rap battle. Good thing he has Hifumi to help him pay the bills, right? So how does Doppo reflect real salaryman experiences? It's all in the lyrics of his solo Black or White, which is an anthem for the modern young Japanese white-collar urbanite. Doppo has been hired into a toxic workplace. He's stressed out by handling relationships with his boss, his superiors, even his juniors, the people below him. And he's stuck at work from 8 a.m. until after the last train leaves Shinjuku Station, which is pretty late. In addition, Doppo has been experiencing something called hatarakikata kaikaku, or work-style reform, which is also in the Black or White lyrics. Hatarakikata kaikaku, work-style reform, is an effort from the Japanese government to curb the effects of buraku kigyo, these toxic companies, and their excessive overtime, pay discrepancies, harassment issues, etc., etc. Unfortunately, it has had pretty mixed results, and in Doppo's case, he's not really seeing any results at all. Now, this also makes Doppo incredibly relatable because if you think about his timeline and his experience, it matches a lot of the millennials and probably now Gen Zers out there. He was hired into a toxic workplace and a bad economy, expected some change, but none happened, and now it's several years later and we're still all stuck at the office. I mean, he's stuck at the office. This just keeps getting worse, doesn't it? There are several types, and in Black or White, Doppo mentions two. He mentions sekuhara, which is sexual harassment. Hifumi, you can, yeah. Hifumi gets to do the job in this video too. And he also mentions pawahara, which is power harassment. It basically means people with authority bullying the little people. Doppo has been working at a toxic workplace that has probably been attempting to adjust to these new regulations with varied levels of success, failure, and based on black or white, it sounds like Doppo's no better off than he was when he first got his job, along with the rest of his generation. But then enter the doctor, because enter COVID-19. A lot of the post-2020 HypMic media refers to COVID-19 and its countermeasures in Japan, such as opening the windows on commuter trains to let in fresh air. Again, this is another Doppo lyric from Light and Shadow. We can assume that the pandemic is more or less part of the HypMic canon. So what did Doppo go through with COVID-19? At first, probably very reluctant remote work. When Japan went into its first state of emergency in April of 2020, a lot of companies attempted to go partially or fully remote with different levels of success. Some companies stuck with it, and others just couldn't handle it. After the first state of emergency was lifted, many workers found themselves commuting again and just, never going back to remote work. Even when new restrictions and states of emergency were implemented, the number of people commuting just did not go down, which means that Doppo was probably commuting on very crowded trains, very safe there, very, very safe, and going to the office throughout the entire pandemic. On top of that, since he works for a medical supply company, his working hours and conditions probably only got worse. But hey, it's okay, he had Hifumi to lean on the whole time, right? Remember that from earlier? Well, Hifumi's host club likely had to shut down or drastically reduce its operations since Kabukicho was a COVID hotspot for a while. And get this, alcohol sales were completely banned or heavily restricted several times during the pandemic. So Hifumi was also in a tight spot. Okay, but then Jacarai's there for him, right? Well, maybe, but Jacarai with his general must-save everyone attitude, he definitely would have put priority on patients and helping out as his hospital. So, Doppo was working intense hours, Hifumi's entire occupation is on the rocks, and Sensei was busy. So now it's February 2023. Next month, March 2023, Japan is finally changing the rules about masking. We're basically finally going to get back into where we were pre-pandemic. So what will change for the modern day urban worker? What has anyone learned from this, or what has anyone gained from this? The unfortunate answer is it really depends on where you're employed. If you're lucky, remote work is still a thing, along with flexible hours, that sort of stuff. But for most people, we're probably still mostly stuck on the train with Doppo commuting to our jobs, where we'll attempt to get on time but probably fail. Japanese work culture is really deeply entrenched, and it's going to take a lot more effort to bring things in the right direction, pandemic or otherwise. So here's the big money question. Why doesn't Doppo just quit his job if it's so horrible? There are two reasons, actually. First of all, in Doppo's original hypnosis radio show on Spotify that unfortunately has been taken down, he says that he doesn't hate his job, really. He doesn't, 100% hate it. There are some aspects of his job that he enjoys and he finds rewarding. But the bigger issue, if we think out of world, is that if the writers ever let Doppo quit his job and move into something a little more realistic, they're going to lose a majority of what makes him appealing. That's even why he had to lose his prize money from the first DRB, otherwise, he would have quit on the spot, and yeah, where's Doppo now? So for plot and character purposes, Doppo is stuck in corporate hell until HypMic ends. Speaking of the end, that's the end of this video. So let's all give Doppo a big hug. Let's give him a big hug. Squish Doppo. Squish Dopes. And to all of the real life Doppos out there, at least feel some happiness that, you're not alone. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed learning more about Doppo or learning all about Doppo all over again. Have a great rest of your day, night, whatever. And see you in the next video. Bye!